I am back. My little AuthorTube hiatus is over, and I am back to talk to you guys about all the writerly things, the bookish things, the motherly things, the coffee things, all the things. I'm back, and I missed you. Today we're starting off with a bang, and we're talking about 3 writerly rules that I'm proud that I break. So, what are they? Stay tuned. Welcome to The Right Mama. My name is Jennifer Aline. I am a freelance writer, a women's fiction writer, and the mother of twin girls. When it comes to writing, there are many rules that writers, novelists, freelancers, writers, creatives in general follow. And even though everybody has their own writing routine, way of creating, and people do break the rules, sometimes people look down at those people. I guess I'm one of those rule breakers. There are 3 rules that I often break when it comes to writing, finishing a novel, creating a story. And I'm honestly pretty proud that I break them. It works for me. It may not work for you, and that's okay. But for me and my writing life, it works. So let's talk about these rules that I break. The first rule that I don't like, don't follow, and I guess I break is the word count rule. A lot of writers, especially in the AuthorTube community, are very, very, very strict about word count. They may want to get a certain amount of words written each week. If it's Camp Nano or NaNoWriMo, they may want to get a certain amount of words written in a span of a month. And that's great. That's a good way for people to track how they create and how much they write. I'm not one of those people, folks. I have never, ever been one to track my writing through word count. And this whole word count phenomenon honestly became real to me when I started AuthorTube, when I joined the YouTube world. And even though I've taken part sort of in NaNoWriMo for years and years in my own way, I had just started to kind of focus on word count when I started my AuthorTube channel in 2019. Wow. Was it 2019 I started this? I started jumping on the word count boat because everybody else was. And I said, okay, let me track my word count. I didn't like it. It's sometimes good to venture out of your comfort zone to see if something works for you. Tracking word count does not work for me because, 1, I don't like numbers. Numbers give me anxiety. So word count gives me anxiety. Tracking it that way is not my thing. I'd rather track my success through scenes I've created, how far in like a chapter I've gotten. Maybe one day I want to write half a chapter. That's my goal. For me, tracking my success through word count is not something I do. A lot of people, that's what they do. 10K in a day. There's a thing called 10K in a day. There's a whole bunch of different challenges that people do when it comes to word count. I'm not one of those people, and I'm okay with that. The second rule that I break is a big one, and it is editing as I go. I will link the video I've created before about editing as I go below, but I edit as I go. And let me tell you, this again shows that you can definitely be in positive and negative ways influenced by other writers. When I joined this AuthorTube community, I realized, oh wow, nobody edits as they go. They do a 0 draft, which I'll admit to, I'd never heard of a 0 draft before. And I've been writing for like my entire life, like 3 decades at this point. And I didn't know what a 0 draft was. I didn't know what this was called. I just thought you wrote, and then you read, and then you changed a few things, then you read it again. I didn't know what a 0 draft was. So when I discovered that editing as you go is something that's looked down upon and is very unpopular in the writing community, I thought, okay, I'm not going to do that as much anymore. I'm going to try to do this the right way. Here's a secret. There's not really a right way to write. There's your way to write. And if it works for you, stick with it. I'm learning as my adventure in this writing publishing world continues that changing what you're used to, changing what works for you, may not work for you if you change it, if that makes any sense at all. I've stopped a little bit editing as I go, and I'm realizing I edit as I go, and that's okay. It makes for a cleaner first draft for me. It makes for less stress when my first draft is done because it's a little bit neater and easier to read. For me, editing as I go works for me, and I'm okay that I break this rule. This is not a rule that everybody likes, and they don't follow this rule. This rule meaning they don't edit as they go. A lot of people will just write, and read their first draft, want to vomit all over it, and then the second draft, try to clean it up, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. For me, I like to stop, read a chapter before, make some changes if necessary, and keep writing. That's what I do. I like to edit as I go, and I'm okay with that. I'm proud to say I break that rule. And the final rule that I like to break is also one that people are probably going to, be a little upset about when they hear. And it's one that I just recently decided I'm going to go back and keep this rule in my life that I like to do because I don't need to change it if it works for me. And that is, I like to reread my book a few times as I'm writing it. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the editing as I go, but in a way that, again, you're supposed to just write your book, stop, let it sit, read it, then edit it, then another round of self-editing. These are the rules that a lot of people, or suggestions that people make when it comes to writing. However, if something has worked for you and you've created good content, good characters, a good plot, a good story, following your own rules, why not stick with them? And again, I was influenced by the writing community over the last few years when they said, no, you should just read, don't stop and reread. And I used to stop after like 50 pages or 100 pages, stop and read what I'd written. And then another 100 pages, stop, reread the entire thing. And I understand that it can make the process slower. And usually I would still finish my book within like a 9-month span. Kind of like making a baby. A book's kind of like making a baby. And I just realized that for the month of April that we're in, April 2021, I'm going to reread the book I've been writing because I want to. I have a lot of things I want to change right now that's going to make it a stronger story when it comes to querying it in the future. I'm going to reread this book and intertwine some new dynamics, and I may be halfway done with this book, and you know what? I'm going to do what I've always done. I'm going to stop and I'm going to reread what I've written. A lot of people, like I said, do not believe in this. I've always done it, and I never looked at it in a negative way. It's always helped me out, and I was going to try to get through this book without stopping and rereading. Nope, it's always worked for me. I'm breaking this rule. So there you have it. That was 3 little rules that I break when it comes to writing, when it comes to finishing a story, creating a solid novel. And I've never been one to track my word count. I have never been one to not edit as I go. And I've never been one to not stop and reread what I've written after 50 or 100 pages. That's always been my process. And I've written 4 novels over the last decade that I am proud of and that were good stories that I've gotten good feedback from agents and editors. One was picked up from a small press. And I'm just going to keep going with what I'm doing because it's worked for me. Do not change the entire model of your writing if it's been successful. If you have done well with that, you don't have to follow every rule that's out there in the writing world. Yes, some are pretty solid when it comes to like querying agents and stuff. Follow those rules. Those rules you stick with. But when it comes to creating, if you have a process that works for you, just stick to what's true to you. Yes, you can be inspired and influenced by other writers, but if something doesn't work for you and you're itching to reread or itching to make some edits here and there, just do you, folks. Do you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe below, hit the thumbs up button. I post every Friday, except this last month when I had a hiatus. So thank you very much. Stay creative and let's put up here. Ooh. Stay caffeinated, folks. Stay caffeinated.